That's us. We're good to go now. Live stream has started, so welcome everybody, and lovely to see you mostly online today, but there's a few of us in the room. I'll start with apologies for the meeting.
Thank you, Chair. We have received apologies from Stephen McAllister and Kenneth Laurie.
Thank you. And are there any declarations of interest? Okay, right, we can move straight on to the minutes of the last meeting, which was on the 30th of June. As ever, I'm not proposing to go through it page by page. If anyone, however, has any queries or any corrections on the minute, can you raise your hand or virtual hand? Gordon.
Yeah, there's reference on page 9, Chair, to COSLA's joint mental hand strategy. I think it should be mental health and wellbeing strategy.
Thanks, Gordon. I see that. Any other questions or corrections? Okay, no, thank you very much then. I'll be happy to agree the minute.
Agreed.
Thank you. And if I can move on to the action log. Is that yourself, Patricia?
Yep, thank you, Chair. Members of the board will see on page 16 an update to the outstanding actions, including some of the reports and updates that are on the agenda today. In relation to the joint meeting with members of Clickman and Stirling, we're trying to finalise a date for that, and we'll communicate that to you as soon as we have that. And work is ongoing in relation to the community bed-based review, and our report will come to a future meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Are there any questions on the action log? Yes, thank you very much. Well, without further ado, I'll move back to Patricia for the Chief Officer report.
Thank you, Chair. So members of the board, you'll see before you the update report from myself as Chief Officer. It contains a good number of updates, including on the recent inspections, the care inspectorate with some of our facilities across the partnership, and those are detailed in section 5. And I'm delighted to present that to you. They have gone and been examined in detail at the Clinical Care Governance Committee and reported to the Audit Committee as well. But you'll see of particular interest is the Community Residential Resources and Housing Support Service, which gained 2 excellent ratings by the Care Inspectorate, but also the performance of 3 of the partnership-run care homes, well, 2 care homes and 1 housing support service, which had ratings of very good and good in relation to leadership at Burnbrae. I think it's of particular note that the board members will remember that you agreed previously that we would re-provision the care within Cunningham House to become a full reablement service. So it's of particular note that the leadership through Gail and her team at Cunningham House has managed to successfully transition into that, but have retained the high standards and the ratings of the Care Inspectorate. So that's of particular note. You'll see we got a mention in the Sunday Times Care Home League as deemed by the Sunday Times as the best place in Scotland to grow old on the back of the assessments of the care homes across the independent providers and local council. That's noted in section 5.5. There's an update and information at 5.10 on the trauma-informed pledge, and more detail in section 5.17 around the Forth Valley Trauma Champion Steering Group and the recommendations for our pledge, which is detailed in section 5.17. There are updates within the report on the NHS Forth Valley escalation process, the public sector equality duty, and again, pleased to report that we have been deemed to be compliant by that organisation, which is a really critical element of work. We did, as a board and with our strategic planning group, a recent development session, do a revisit of the self-evaluation against the ministerial strategic group recommendations, and you'll see that detailed in section 11. And we will do some further work with yourselves and the strategic planning group and others and bring a report back in future to that. There's a section with some detail on the programme for government at section 12 and a summary of the elements that are particular to health and social care, which is of particular interest, as well as at section 13, an update on the National Care Service, the progress with the development of that, and we will keep board members up to date in any developments in that regard. So to draw your attention to the recommendations in the report, at section 4 under delegated authority, just to remind you that since March 2020 and the start of the pandemic, board members had agreed delegated additional authority to myself in partnership with the chair and vice chair to take any decisions that were required in response to the changing circumstances. And that delegated authority has been in place since then, although reviewed at every meeting in the interim. And you'll see at section 2.1, we're recommending that we step down that delegated authority and revert to the delegated authority that's attributed to myself and others as part of the schemes of delegation, and that we no longer have that requirement or capacity. So that's at recommendation 2.1. And at 2.2, the members of the board are asked to note that our partners have signed up to the trauma-informed pledge as detailed in the report. So thank you. I'm delighted to take any questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much, and I think the performance of our care homes across Falkirk is one to absolutely be commended, and I think it's a great testament to the staff involved of the amount of work that they have put in, and I think it's important to take note of that today and pass on our congratulations as the IJB. And obviously the pledge, the trauma-informed pledge, I think is really important. And I did note in the programme for government around expanding hospital at home, which I think is a really important service, and the commitment to increase wages for care workers. And I think, what an invaluable part of our workforce. And I think that the more we can do to reward them, the better. And progress on the National Care Service. We're getting there kind of slowly. But obviously for note of me, the fact that the continuation of the short breaks funding, I think is really, really important for carers in our area. So without, you heard enough from me, so I'm going to open it up for any comments or questions. Was that you, Anne?
It was. I think I put my hand up. Yes, I did. Thank you, Chair. I would just like to add my congratulations to all the staff and managers involved in achieving those really, really good inspection reports. That's fantastic. I have just a couple of questions. First of all, I wonder if you'd say a little more about the National Treatment Centre and the progress being made there. Second question, where are we in terms of our provision within the budget to give pay of £12 per hour to the staff? It's absolutely a key aim, I think, is to achieve that, but are we in a position financially to do that without other detriments? And I also, thirdly, I wanted to ask about the much publicised Glasgow Safer Drug Consumption facility, and whether you have any comment to make on that.
Thank you. I'll maybe pass over to Stephen around the pay and then come back and answer your other questions. Thanks.
Thank you. So the Scottish Government has advised that they will be funding the £12 per hour pay from the 1st of April next year. So as we develop our business case for the new financial year, I intend to incorporate an assumption that we will pay all of our providers the £12 per hour, with the corresponding assumption that the funding for that will be fully met. It's similar to previous years where there have been announcements on the living wage, and where Scottish Government has provided funding for those increases as well. What they don't provide is the funding for the non-pays element. So that is something that we will factor in as part of our budget planning, and that will be part of the business case that comes back. But in terms of the actual £12 employee cost commitment, I expect that to be fully funded, and so you should see it in the business case as that comes forward in December, both as a cost commitment but also a funded commitment from Scottish Government. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, I wish it could be more.
Thank you. So in relation to the National Treatment Centre, I'm just doing a check to see if there's any other senior colleagues from the Health Board here, and I don't see anyone. Can I commit to send you by email an update from, I'll ask for that from colleagues, a more detailed update around the National Treatment Centre. Okay, in relation,
Fine, thank you.
is that okay? In relation to the safe consumption rooms in Glasgow, which I understand they've now identified a site in the east end of Glasgow, and that will be going ahead. There are a number of the other cities that are looking to also provision such a facility. I'm not aware that we've got any local plans as yet, but I don't know, Martin, if you want to come in on that. Thanks.
You're right, Patricia, it's not something we've really discussed at the Falkirk Alcohol and Drug Partnership, but we will wait to see, I guess, the benefits, or I guess how it plays out, these pilot sites. So we'll just keep monitoring the situation and see what the results are, and then we'll consider that at the Alcohol and Drugs Partnership at a future date.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any further questions? No, in that case, are we happy to, I'll take you back to the recommendations. Are we happy to agree that the delegated authority of the Chief Officer reverts to the scheme of delegation?
Agreed.
Agreed.
And to note that the partners have signed up to the Trauma Informed Pledge. Thank you. So we are now moving on to the 2023-2024 finance report, and I shall pass over to Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. So the report provides a summary of the financial position for the first 3 months of the current financial year, including projected outturn position. For this period, we are reporting a year-to-date overspend of £2.124 million against the set-aside budget, and an overspend of £120,000 for the integrated budget. An overspend of £8.211 million is forecast to the year end for the set-aside budget to be managed by NHS Forth Valley, and a forecast overspend of £1.804 million is reported for the integrated budget, although at this stage we expect this position can be managed to deliver a break even by year end. Section 3 of the report tracks the movement in the annual budget, and the table in section 3.2 shows how the budget has grown from just over £281 million reported at the last committee cycle to an annual budget of just over £287 million by the end of the June financial period. Directions to the Council and the Health Board required to be updated for this budget growth, and further detail can be found within Appendix 1. Section 4 of the report is on year-to-date financial performance, and this is summarised in Table 2, which shows the overspend of £2.124 million against the set-aside budget by the end of June, and a net overspend of £120,000 on the integrated budget over the same period. The top part of the table splits that into the 3 core service areas. The rest of section 4 explains the main reasons for these overspends. Section 4.3 lists the main overspend areas for set aside and notes that further information has been requested from finance colleagues who support acute hospital services. Now, since writing this report, we are now starting to see that additional detail, and there will be further meetings to share understanding and to look at how we address the set aside position. The paragraph also touches on medical staffing due diligence, where again information has now been shared. This has mainly been a series of figures, and further contextual information has been requested. The primary the primary healthcare section notes a significant prescribing pressure, and the position may have deteriorated further since writing the report. It's difficult to get an accurate picture due to delays with the new prescribing system implemented by Practitioner Services Division. Currently, this means that recharges are 4 months in arrears. So the forecasts are very much based on estimated prescribing costs. We added fairly substantial funding to the prescribing budget at the start of the year, and the pressures are mainly down to new Buvidal charges, volume increases, and as you'll see further on in section 4.12, the under-delivery of savings. The community healthcare underspend is helping the overall financial position and is mainly due to 2 factors: savings from slippage and timescales for new initiatives, and widespread vacancy and staff turnover savings from several areas. The main social care pressure areas are care at home, where an 18% increase in year-on-year activity is resulting in an overspend, and residential care, again linked to high demand and also ongoing agency costs. Last year, agency staff costs were absorbed by COVID funding that is no longer available, and work has commenced to review our care home establishments, to recruit the core staffing and to minimise our reliance on agency. Section 4.7 notes fairly widespread vacancies across social care services, as well as daycare underspends, where work on both older and younger adult reviews is progressing. 4.8 is not a financial risk this year, as we do have non-recurring funding available to the year end, but a decision will be required on the long-term requirement for interim care beds. Sections 410 through to 415 provide an update on savings delivery. Table 3 provides a high-level summary with further detail within Appendix 2. There are comments in both Section 4.13 and 4.14 on the planned use of non-recurring reserves as part of the current year savings strategy. Then over the page, the final 2 paragraphs in Section 4 note the overall position with reserves, where roughly half of the brought forward reserves balance of £28.829 million is for earmark purposes, £8.730 million was for new developments, and £5.769 million was for general and contingency reserves. Section 5 of the report deals with the forecast outturn position, and the figures in Table 4 are very much a reflection of the year-to-date variances previously discussed.